And then now it's time to really tap on the creativity of this community, on your creativity, in order to explore and expand how science and policy can interact based on the knowledge that is created by the MSCA community. So in other words, it's time for our pitching competition. So what happens in the next 2 days, it will be a round of 3 pitching rounds, and the pitches will come from 15 Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions Fellows or alumni that were selected among 170 candidates. And basically what they will do is that they will tell us, research topics, projects, social initiatives, ideas, products, services, whatever, that is related to the topic of our meeting, okay? So this interface between science and policy. So the structure of the pitching will be as follows. There will be a 3-minute pitch for each one of these 15 candidates. And after that pitch, there will be a live question from the members of the jury. I will introduce the jury. It's a really high caliber one. And the pitches are divided in 3 categories. The 3 categories explore 3 different approaches, 3 different visions of the interaction between science and policy. So at the end, the jury will select one winner for each category, but pay attention because there is a 4th prize that will be selected by you and by those that are following us online. So there will be a Mentimeter link that will appear shortly behind me, in which you will be able to vote which one of the 15 candidates is your favorite one, okay? So first of all, let me introduce the members of the jury that sit here in front of us. So Pablo Camacho, Science Outreach and Engagement Officer at the Spanish Foundation for Science and Technology, FECYT. Antoneta Angelova-Krasteva, Director for Innovation, Digital Education and International Cooperation at the Directorate General of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture of the European Commission. Then we have Izaskun Lacunza, that we have seen now, Director of Science for Policy at the Spanish Foundation for Science and Technology, FECYT. Then we have Tomasz Huczalik. He's an industrial PhD student at the biotech company Encardia, MSCA Grant Fellow, and former winner of the Falling Walls Lab contest. Then we have Antonio Mas, Vice Rector of Science Policy at the University of Castilla-La Mancha. We have heard him this morning. And Fernanda Bajanca, Chair of the Marie Curie Alumni Association. And finally, last but not least, Graham Wilkie, who is the head of the MSCA Co-Fund and MSCA Citizens projects at the European Research Executive Agency, REA. So the first round of pitches, which we will have it now, is called Contribution to Wider EU Policy Priorities. And in this category, we will hear contributions from MSCI projects to those political priorities that are central to the current European Commission policies, like, for example, the Horizon Europe missions or the European Green Deal. So I remind you how the dynamics will work. I think the candidates are already ready there. So you will have 3 minutes for your pitch. I will be here, and when the 3 minutes are over, I will wave my hands in such a way that you know that it's done. And then there will be one question from the jury. I will ask who wants to ask the question and the answer will last 3 minutes more. And at the end, I will also wave my hands. So please stick to the timing and don't exceed it. So we start now with the first pitch by Conor Shaw, Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions Early Stage Researchers at the University College Dublin. And the title of the pitch is Built Environment Sustainability Policy, Making It Work in Practice. Welcome, Conor.
Okay. Thank you for the kind introduction. Yes. So, I am willing to bet that all of you have been involved in a building project at some point in your life, whether that was renovating your kitchen or building some elaborate sandcastle. You all know that construction requires bringing together diverse skills all to work towards a common goal, maybe apart from the sandcastle. But it's this perspective on complexity, which leads me to believe that the way we're going to solve the wicked problems facing our society, like climate change, is through multidisciplinary research. I'm going to show you in the next few minutes how my research crosses disciplinary boundaries in order to solve making built environment sustainability policy workable in practice. I'm going to show you how my research is driven by 3 of the top 6 EU priorities: the Green Deal, the digital transition, and economics for all. But why construction? Well, it's been a historically inefficient sector, and it's not because we're just lazy. It's a complex interplay of humans, nature, and really big objects, a system of systems interacting together. For this reason, it's of great importance and it can be a big impact. In fact, it makes up a large proportion of our global resource consumption. But one of the main problems in construction is that the decisions are made usually based on very limited information, just the construction costs. But the science, which I'm involved in, life cycle costing, we know that the majority of resources are actually being incurred throughout the life of an asset. This science challenges our human characteristic of short-termism. And for that reason, it underpins quite a lot of the European Union's sustainability mechanisms, like the Green Deal. But there is a big practical challenge in the built environment. And it's that the information available to policymakers, from policymakers to the practitioners, is, in the best of cases, vague, and in the worst cases, downright contradictory. My research provides the first open source IT blueprint, which practitioners can take and help to navigate some of the complexity with that kind of reporting. It's really easy to use, and I know this because we've tested it extensively with stakeholders, including policymakers, through the Marie Curie Fellowship and secondments. The idea is that my work can be attached to existing standards and make the already envisaged political plans workable in practice. So it leaves one question, really important question, and I'd like the audience to participate perhaps if you have an idea of the answer. What do you think it is that this 6-year-old who I coerced into making my slides for this presentation, what do you think they were trying to communicate with this image? Does anybody have a guess? Shout it out. Climate change. Okay. So this has become a symbol of the evidence of climate change, the polar bear on the ice cap. But I'd like you to take 2 things away from today. The first is that when we're talking about evidence-based decision-making, we need to be aware of what's going on below the surface. And the science I'm involved with can help us do that. And the second thing is, and I know you all have the ability to influence policy and fund research, please consider funding multidisciplinary research. You've heard it all this morning. A way to do that is by making sure that research aligns with multiple political priorities. Thank you.
Thanks, Connor. One question. Okay, Izaskun.
Thank you, Connor. Very nice presentation. And I liked very much how you made the point. I just wanted to double check whether I understood correctly about the system that you have developed. I'm guessing it's kind of a translator in between the policymakers and those that need to comply with what the policy is saying. Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, okay. So I'd say it's a harmonization, yeah, between policymakers' top-down reporting and what practitioners are actually doing at the bottom up. So It's a huge harmonization effort needed, and this is one step of that.
Okay, I see. And who would be, what kind of professional would be the one doing this harmonization? Would you need new professionals?
You're looking at them. You're looking at them.
And
no.
would policymakers and practitioners need to be trained somehow?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, I think everything I heard this morning from the panel really echoes just that point. And to be honest, when I got involved with the MSCA 3 years ago, that was kind of the message they were giving us. They took us from somewhere we were real comfortable, like construction, and they threw me into computer science. And to be honest, hadn't opened my laptop for 2 years before taking the job. I'd been working on a construction site. So I'm not the technocrat. But what I realized there was we need to have these middle people able to speak with developers, software developers, and able to speak with construction professionals in my discipline. But yeah, I think that's where MSc can come in. We're getting that kind of cross-training. It's really uncomfortable. And I try to kind of bolster my colleagues and say, we need to become a little bit comfortable with discomfort. And that's part of the process. But certainly discomfort's there.
Great, thanks a lot. Thanks for your thoughts. And so you are invited to take your seat. And let me call on stage the next candidate, Esmeralda Colombo. She's an MSCA postdoctoral fellow at the Euro-Mediterranean Center for Climate Change in Italy. And her talk is called Why Storage?
I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. This summer, I explained to Freya what I do. I work for nature, I said. I work for the sun and wind to store their energy for when they go to sleep. This is storage. We often think of batteries, but there are multiple ways to store energy, even elevators, green hydrogen. Who would say that energy topics can just be so interesting? So why storage? Coal, gas, nuclear depend on a switch. They are dispatchable at will. Instead, solar and wind come and go with the rotation of heavenly bodies. They are variable. The grid needs to integrate them, and storage allows for it. If you've wondered how energy systems can be 100% renewable, this is the technology you've been waiting for. Not only do we need to triple renewables by 2030, we also need to grow storage 100 times globally. This is why we need to really store energy and turn it into electricity. I don't just work for nature, I also work for law. I'm a lawyer at heart. The problem with storage is there is not enough legislation. EU rules are scattered. The only dedicated documents are from the Commission from this year, and they are not binding. This is why I'm standing in front of you today. With my redesign projects in 2 years, I'll present the Commission with a storage bill, the first dedicated document in legislation to renewable energy storage, for the EU to meet the need for over 200 gigawatts of energy storage by 2030 and 500 gigawatts by 2050. This will hit wider political priorities, at least 3. The Repower EU targets, the 42.5 renewable share by 2030, and the net zero target in the European Green Deal by 2050. Member states will get a one-stop shop of targets and incentives. I'll interview 60 experts to include the best mind in the bill design. Of these, 50% will be women. But is this enough? We need people to make the bill. We need to include women. This year, the European Year of Skills, I co-started an expert network for women in green energy and finance, Green Power Plus. In the world of brown jobs, workers were mainly men. At Green Power Plus, we believe as a goal that 50% of storage professionals should be women. GP Plus tackles the social side of the Green Deal. It's a net zero industry academy to upskill, reskill, retain women, but it's also an AI-based matchmaking platform between top women talents and industries looking for a new hire. In this way, not only will we be a stronger union, but there will also be many more fantastic people joining me in saying to their daughters, they work for nature. Thank you very much.
Okay, one question from the jury, please. Graham.
Graham Wilkie, Esmeralda, congratulations. You mentioned your daughter. and I'm interested because you wrote a paper earlier this year called The Politics of Silence, Hannah Arendt and Future Generations Fight for the Climate. How do you ensure that your daughter has a voice for a problem which is going to affect her much more than it's going to affect us?
Right. Thank you for your question. So I think it's a matter of impact. If my daughter will have the education and self-confidence to know she can make an impact, she will have that voice. But on the other hand, we need institutions. That's why I wrote this paper. It was mainly based on climate litigation, but from litigation, we need also to know how we can better up our institutions in sense, in terms of representation. So democracy is not just an election every 4 or 5 years. I think that younger generations can be really empowered because they are more aware of the climate problem and they may be better aware also of the energy solutions in my case. So I will definitely talk to my daughter about all the potential of renewable energies so that it's not really dragging down the positive narrative. It's fundamental to let them represent themselves. Thanks.
Great. Thanks a lot, Esmeralda Colombo. Okay, so the next candidate is Linda Brondnicke. She's an MSCA PhD student at ETH Zurich in Switzerland, and her pitch is called "Can we optimize the energy transition?"
Yes, so today we're talking about whether we can optimize the energy transition. And for that, I want to give some context. I'm an engineer by training, and throughout my education, I was given lots of tools, really useful tools, amongst which there is a magical wand called optimization. And this is really fantastic because if we have a research question such as how can policies drive the energy transition, we can go ahead, collect lots of input data such as energy and technology prices and energy demand profiles, then we can run our mathematical optimization model and it will tell us something such as if we increase the carbon tax by X%, we expect a Y% decrease in system emissions. So this is all fantastic, and let's look at what this would look like as an example. Let's say we have a family called Family Ruralia that lives in a suburb of Zurich, and they have a nice garden and a huge roof. So when there's a new subsidy for solar panels called the feed-in tariff, they go ahead and install one on their roof. So this way, they're not only able to reduce their energy-related emissions by 3%, but also their energy-related bills go down by 5% because they are receiving the subsidy. So this really sounds like a fantastic policy for people, doesn't it? However, there's one important aspect that we're forgetting when we're looking at it this way. And we can understand this by remembering how it was last winter. Because when I think back to last winter, I had to buy some extra sweaters because suddenly the temperatures were toned down everywhere, not only in my own home because we're trying to preserve energy to contribute to solving the energy crisis, but also in the office and everywhere else. And that was okay because first of all, I did have the money to buy warmer clothes. And second of all, I did that voluntarily. But if you also think back to last winter, maybe you remember a person or a family that had to turn down their temperatures more than they wanted to. Not because they wanted to save energy, but because they were frightened by the high energy prices and they were worried that they wouldn't be able to pay their bills anymore. And this is energy poverty, and this is a real problem. So we need to remember that different people are impacted by the same policies in different ways. So if we have, for example, a second family called Family Albania, they might not have the space for solar panels. So they're not able to decrease their emissions, and their energy bills rise significantly because retail rates might rise. We can contrast this as engineers through optimization with other policies, such as a carbon tax, which might reduce emissions more uniformly, but also increase cost for people, and then we need to start talking about how we allocate this extra revenues from the carbon tax. So what I want you to take away from my presentation today is that we do have this magical wand called optimization, which can be super useful for policy design. However, we should use it with care, and we should keep other objectives in mind, such as energy equity.
Thanks, Linda. One question from the jury. Okay, Thomas?
So you mentioned family Urbania and family Ruralia.
Yes.
From your work looking into optimization, if you would present it to these imaginary or real families, what do you think would be the most surprising aspect of optimization as a tool for them?
For the families themselves.
Yes.
That maybe there are impacts that they don't realize that policies have on their lives. For example, the impact on the retail rates, that we can quantify ahead of introducing the policies, that we can at least give an estimate of how they will be impacted, and that the retail rates that they face are not a given, but that they're influenced by these policies that they might not even be aware of. There's actually quite a low awareness of certain policies.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
So the next speech will come from Martin Costa, a Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions PhD student at KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden, and the pitch is called How Sound Can Keep Us Healthy. Welcome, Martin.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my pitch presentation, How Sound Can Keep Us Healthy. I am Martin Costa, and I'll be taking you to the beach. A beautiful one, no doubt, but you'll notice it's contaminated by plastics. And what if I told you that most of them you actually can't see because they are micro and nanoplastics? Unfortunately, they've been found in our blood, lung, heart, and even in unborn babies. You might think this problem is slowing down, but today we produce more than 400 million metric tons of plastic, a number that will increase to 1,500 by 2050. Right now, in a best case scenario, we will mismanage 10% of them, but if nothing changes, this number will be closer to 50%. And everything we mismanage reaches our oceans, degrading into more micro and nanoplastics. We have to keep our drinking water safe of these contaminants because their health risks are not at all well understood. And you as policymakers, you will protect our environment, our future, and prepare our economy for a sustainable future. But how will you achieve this when there is little to no information about microplastics as they get smaller, more dangerous, and also harder to monitor? That's where my invention comes in, the EcoGrid. Invented at KTH as part of the MON plus ITN, it captures all microplastics below 50 micron using sound waves. It does so 20 times faster than other solutions and is compatible with modern spectroscopy, giving us a chemical fingerprint of our sample. In this experimental work, you can see many colors, but what I see are different types and sizes of microplastic captured by sound, ready to be analyzed and cataloged, so you, the policymaker, know their origin and where to act with evidence-based policy at the level of production and disposal, supporting many policy priorities of the EU, such as the European Green Deal. We want a circular economy of plastics, zero pollution and climate neutrality, which you will notice is intimately connected to many of the Horizon EU missions. 3, restore our oceans and water, and 4, create climate neutral cities. Other directives and strategies, many of them hinge upon us understanding more about these contaminants, and in doing so we will become a stronger Europe in the world as we become leaders in sustainable plastic use with strong regulation infrastructure. This will promote our European way of life by protecting the health and economies of future generations in this changing world. Many other sustainable development goals of the UN are supported by this ambition as we prepare all 3 pillars of our planetary crisis. This is a monumental task, and we must rise up to face it. This is not about my project, microplastics, or any device. This is about you, your health, and the health of all generations that will follow. This, my dear colleagues, friends, and fellow members of our European Union, this is how sound can keep us healthy.
Thanks a lot. Questions? One question. Fernanda?
Thank you, Martin. What are the main obstacles that you foresee to bring the results of your research into concrete actions from policymakers at this point?
That's a very good question. It's, from my technical point of view, it becomes very difficult as we go from microplastics to nanoplastics. Right now, we have developed many techniques that allow us to capture from 20 micron to 1 micron and even go down to 100 nanometers, but the area is so dense in knowledge that it will be quite difficult from a policy perspective to try to capture everything in the best way possible. So right now, what I believe is the best approach is to know what are the types of microplastic and nanoplastic that are most common, for example, in our drinking water, and act on that, on those industries, in the sense that now already there is legislation on tire production and investment, so we reduce microplastics coming from them, and also textiles. So I foresee that other industries also need this kind of attention to be compatible with the sustainable future.
Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot, Martin.
Thank you so much.
And now the last candidate of this session, Marina Shevtsova. She's an MSCA postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia, and her pitch is called Untold Stories, Experiences of Ukrainian LGBTQ+ Refugees in the European Union Member States.
Thank you. Let me tell you about my dentist. My dentist is so good. I actually left Ukraine in 2012, and since then, every year, I would go to Kyiv just to have my teeth checked by her. Not anymore. Last year, as Russia invaded Ukraine, my dentist, who happens to be a lesbian, took her partner, their dog, and they left the country fearing for their safety. They went to Poland first. In Poland, she would be allowed to practice. However, you know, Poland is not the best country for LGBTQ couple, so they decided against staying and went instead to Germany. In Germany, to be able to work, you have to master German until C1 level. So this is something she's been doing for the last 2 years, and probably will spend another year or a year and a half doing so. Just imagine how many people she could have treated during these years. Yet my dentist has chosen to give up, for the meantime, on her professional ambition for the sake of having freedom of being who she is. Do you think that this is something common for queer refugees from Ukraine? Well, through my research, as I talked to dozens of them, I discovered it's not that straightforward. Let's look at another couple. A couple from Kharkiv, a city in eastern Ukraine, 2 highly qualified lawyers. Now they live and work in Slovakia and Bratislava. They work at the factory. Their work is so physically demanding that they don't have time or energy to learn Slovak language, which means that their job opportunities are quite limited. Slovakia doesn't recognize same-sex marriage. It means that they have to pretend they're sisters or friends or colleagues. I asked them why to stay, why do it to yourself, why not to go to Germany, to Netherlands, Sweden, you name it. And they said, well, we have a son, and for our son's psychological well-being, it is easier to be in Slovakia, where language is similar to Ukrainian, he picked it up quickly, he has friends, he loves his school. So it's okay, we will hide who we are, we will work at the factory, we will be tired, but we are caring parents. In the last 2 years, we also saw how the EU member states were incredibly generous and welcoming towards Ukrainian refugees. Yet also my stories tell you and show you that while all those countries were doing spectacularly in some regards, they were failing all those people in many others. And I believe that this lack of communication and lack of informed common action between public institutions of member states, NGOs, and academics that created situations when all those people are facing difficult choices. How would you choose if you could only pick one? Are you a woman in love with another woman? Are you a mother? Or are you an ambitious professional? In the European Union, the union based on values, are those the choices you want these people to make, we want these people to make? I don't think so. Instead, I believe that together, policymakers, civil society activists, and researchers like myself, we can develop better solutions. Let's do better together. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Marina. Question?
Thank you,
Pablo?
Marina, for your talk and also your research. I was wondering what happened with the countries that are receiving war refugees when they take a step back on LGBT rights and human rights. What happened with these communities?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we know what happens. These communities, those who can afford it and who can be, who can use the mobility, the right for mobility, they often choose to move to other EU countries. But this is a privilege. This is a privilege not for everyone, for many reasons. Not all has employability in other countries where there is a different language and so on. some people go into hiding if they can be straight passing, and others just suffer marginalization and discrimination. But I also would like to stress that this is not only about queer refugees I'm talking about, not only about these vulnerable groups. This is just a story to illustrate how people with some differences from the crowd, so to say, from the society, can be suffering, because statistically the numbers are showing that Ukrainian refugees are doing great, but they aren't.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Marlene. Well, this is so exciting, isn't it? I have the feeling that my brain has been showered with many very interesting ideas, and now we will have time to process it. So thanks a lot to the candidates. Thanks a lot to the jury. It has been a great first pitching session, and we are going to have two more, one this afternoon and one tomorrow morning. So be prepared to have your brain prepared to be showered even more with great ideas. So now we will leave the Mentimeter open for a couple of minutes more. Let me remind you that you need to cast a vote for each one of the candidates in order to have your Mentimeter filed, okay? So while the jury will make their decision on their own, remember that there is a fourth prize that is given by the audience, and please take the opportunity to cast the votes for each one of the members of the pitching session. Okay, so the morning the morning session of the conference is almost over. This afternoon, so now there is lunch, and this afternoon from 2:30 to 4 p.m., there will be 3 parallel sessions that will explore, once again, 3 different angles on how the MSCA can contribute to the interaction between science and policy. So the idea of this session is to really to foster your participation. We really would like to hear your recommendation in all these 3 aspects on how to really improve, increase, strengthen this sort of bridge the distance between these 2 worlds. So the topics of the parallel sessions, let me remind them to you, and also the locations. I understand you have picked one in your when you signed up for the conference, so bear attention to the location of your own workshop. So the first one is the intersectorial dimension of MSCA. And so you will hear there about experiences of collaboration between researchers and the public administration sector. This workshop will be here in the Paraninfo, okay? The second workshop is MSCA from global to regional. So participants will discuss how international network of scientists can work to tackle global challenges together, starting from their local experiences, okay? So this will be in the Aula Magna, which is next to the cafeteria. We will have lunch in the cafeteria, so it will be close to there. Workshop 3 is called MSCA and Inclusiveness, and here you will hear about and talk about best practices to achieve a multicultural environment in institutions and have specifically efforts to help refugee researchers. This session is in Salón de Grados in Edificio Sabatini, which is not far from here, from the Paraninfo. Okay, so after lunch, please go to the location of the workshop you have picked when signing in. So now it's time for lunch. Food will be served in the cafeteria. There is a 1-hour slot time for lunch. Then there will be the workshop. After the workshop, there will be a coffee break, and then we reconvene here for the afternoon session at 16:20, okay? 20 minutes past 4 p.m. So I think that's all. If anybody of you have this headphone left, please give it back at the entrance, and bon appétit, enjoy your lunch. Thanks.